Aunt Esther, I've made up my mind. I'm willing to come back and get married. On the other end of the line, Esther Hawthorne paused, clearly surprised by my answer. She then continued in a heartfelt tone. Joe, you've finally let go. I told you before, a one-sided love will never end well. Leave all the wedding arrangements to me. The man I've chosen for you, his family background and character are absolutely impeccable. I've watched him grow up, you know. Hearing my aunt's confident tone, I murmured in agreement, it's time to let go. The wedding will be next month. Remember to tell your Uncle Sterling, all right? Come back together. He absolutely has to be at your wedding. After all, he's the one who raised you all these years. He'll have to be the one to give you away to the groom. After a moment of silence, I spoke again, my voice earnest, with a tension I could barely conceal. Aunt Esther, about my marriage, could you help me keep it a secret from Uncle Sterling? He's put so much on hold over the years to take care of me. He's about to get engaged himself, and I don't want him to be distracted by my affairs. My voice was sensible and sweet, prompting a sigh of admiration from Esther. Our Joe is all grown up, thinking of her uncle now. All right, I'll help you keep the wedding a secret for now. Just as I hung up, Sterling Hawthorne was standing right behind me. His dark eyes were filled with curiosity. What wedding? A secret from who? My heart clenched, but I kept my expression calm. A friend of mine is getting married and keeping it from her family. Sterling gave a faint nod and didn't press further, his gaze dropping to the envelope in his hand. Is this a letter you wrote to me? I recognized it at once. It was the letter I had written on my 18th birthday. It was addressed to the Sterling of 5 years in the future, filled with all the love I held for him. In a panic, I snatched the envelope from his hand. His palm was suddenly empty, his dark eyes brimming with confusion. Facing his scrutinizing gaze, my palms grew so sweaty they dampened the edges of the letter. Just as I was about to steel myself and offer an explanation, my phone rang, shattering the silence. Sterling answered it almost instantly. Hearing a sweet, feminine voice on the other end, he didn't wait for my answer. A smile touched his lips as he turned and went upstairs. Watching his retreating back, I finally relaxed my clenched fist and tore open the envelope. Several sketches fell out. The man on the paper had sharp, chiseled features, a strong nose, and deep, tender eyes. At the bottom was a line of fine black script. Sterling Hawthorne, I love you. I know this is a forbidden, shameless thought, but can you love me back? The paper was a testament to a secret, forbidden love, a young girl's innocent and overwhelming affection laid bare. My thoughts drifted back many years to the first time I met Sterling Hawthorne. I was 5 years old then. Having just lost my parents, I was diagnosed with depression. I'd spend all day in my room, not eating, drinking, or sleeping, just staring blankly at the ceiling. Sterling appeared dressed as a wise old wizard from a myth, complete with a white wig and a long beard. He told me my parents had never left. They had become angels watching over me. If I ate obediently, I would be able to see them when I grew up. It was the first time 5-year-old me had ever seen a wizard. I clung to the wise old wizard and cried all night, eventually falling asleep from exhaustion. When I woke up, the wizard was gone. In his place was a man who called himself my uncle. And just like that, I went home with Sterling Hawthorne. Over the years, Sterling transformed from a rough bachelor into a sensitive, warm man. All because of me. Having lost my family at such a young age, I was a complex and sensitive child, often falling ill from pent-up emotions. But I refused to see a therapist. So Sterling devoured countless psychology books, becoming a semi-psychologist himself, helping me, bit by bit, to step out of the shadows. He cared for me meticulously, driving me to and from school every day, rain or shine. No matter how busy or tired he was, he would cook for me personally and find ways to make me smile. My shattered little heart was pieced back together, bit, by this man. In middle school, I overheard the adults talking and accidentally learned that Sterling wasn't my blood-related uncle. He was an orphan my mother had found on the street. Because my grandfather had always wanted a son, he adopted Sterling and raised him as his own. From then on, my feelings for him began to subtly change. I fell in love with the uncle who had raised me. On my 18th birthday, Sterling smiled and asked his little princess what she wanted for her coming-of-age gift. Under the soft yellow light, the sharp lines of his face seemed exceptionally tender. My heart was beating faster than ever before. I couldn't help but stand on my toes and kiss his warm cheek. "I want you, Uncle Sterling." When he realized what was happening, Sterling recoiled, taking 2 steps back. For the first time ever, his face was grim as he spoke to me. "Jocelyn, I am your uncle. You shouldn't do this." "This is wrong." I took 2 steps forward, tilting my head up to look at him stubbornly. "But you're not my real uncle. We're not related by blood. Why can't we be together?" He wearily pinched the bridge of his nose, his tone turning cold. "I'm 10 years older than you. It's impossible between us. Society wouldn't accept a relationship like ours. Jocelyn, I hope this never happens again." But I didn't listen. It happened almost every month. But after this month, it wouldn't happen again. A week ago, I came home from a dinner party and heard strange noises coming from my own bedroom. When I pushed the door open, I saw Sterling, shirtless, pressing down on a beautiful woman. What was happening was all too clear. The uncle I loved had a girlfriend. "Get out," his voice, laced with drunkenness, held a trace of anger. I sat numbly outside my own bedroom door all night. The intimate sounds of a man and a woman, which lasted the entire night, chilled my heart little by little. In that moment, I finally decided to give up. To completely give up on loving Sterling Hawthorne. He was right. It was impossible between us. He could only ever be my uncle. The morning sun spilled onto the dining table. Sterling came down from the second floor, adjusting his cuffs as he headed for the door. "I have something on today, so I'm leaving first. You can take a taxi to the office later." My gaze lifted from the empty table. "Okay, I will, Uncle Sterling." Hearing me call him that, Sterling's steps faltered. Ever since I had confessed my feelings on my 18th birthday, this was the first time I had called him Uncle Sterling again. For a moment, it felt strange to him, as if something was off, but he knew this was how it was supposed to be. Suppressing the odd feeling in his heart, Sterling gave a calm nod and said lightly, "Right. You can just have some bread for breakfast." I picked up the loaf of bread from the corner and saw that it was long expired. It was because I never ate cold toast for breakfast. I usually had no appetite in the morning, so Sterling had bought countless cookbooks and would wake up at 6 every day to make me all sorts of exquisite pastries, appealing in color, aroma, and taste, just to coax me into eating. The Sterling of the past had truly cared for me, lavishing so much of his time on me. But now, he couldn't even wait for me to brush my teeth so we could go to the office together. I stood by the side of the road as a steady drizzle seeped past the edges of my small umbrella. A car sped by, sending a thick sheet of puddle water splashing all over me. By the time I reached the office, I was soaked from head to toe. My assistant rushed over with a towel, her hesitant voice tinged with confusion. "Miss Fairchild, how come you didn't come in with Mr. Hawthorne today? Mr. Hawthorne is looking for you." My assistant had grown accustomed to seeing us arrive at the company together, accustomed to Sterling reminding her daily to take care of me, to make sure I drank water on time, got up and walked around, relaxed, and didn't catch a cold. She used to complain silently 1,000 times a day that she'd never met a more nagging president than Sterling Hawthorne. But today, even she found it a bit strange. I took the file from her. Water dripped from my hair, blurring the text. After a soft knock, I entered the CEO's office. Sterling, who was reviewing documents, frowned slightly as he felt the chill from the file. I couldn't help but let out a soft sneeze. Sterling took his suit jacket from the back of his chair, draped it over his arm, pulled some cold medicine from a drawer, and poured a glass of warm water. He stood up, a gentle look in his eyes. My heart tightened and began to race as I watched him walk toward me. In the past, even if I just coughed lightly, Sterling would rub my head and coax me into taking my medicine. The next second, Sterling brushed past me and stopped right behind me. His deep voice was laced with a concerned reprimand. "How did your sleeve get wet? Be good now. Take this medicine so you don't catch a cold." I turned around, stunned. A beautiful and radiant face came into view. Sabrina Sinclair was looking down, pouting like a child who had done something wrong. I was just in the restroom, and I turned the faucet on too high. I got it wet by accident. "You're a grown woman, still so careless." Sterling affectionately ruffled Sabrina's hair, gently placed his jacket over her shoulders, and then rolled up her damp sleeve, wanting to warm her arm with his hands. Drip, drip. I stood there, dripping water onto the floor, a small puddle quickly forming at my feet. Only then did Sterling seem to remember I was there. He turned his head and looked at me coolly. Is there anything else? No. So, this is what it was like. When you care about someone, even a single drop of water on them is like a flood in your eyes. And when you don't care, even if they're standing right in front of you, completely soaked, you don't see them at all. A clear, feminine voice stopped me as I was about to leave. You must be Joe. I'm Sabrina Sinclair, your uncle's girlfriend. Do you have time for lunch together? Sterling frowned, seeming as if he wanted to refuse. I was drenched and miserable, coughing again, and was about to decline myself. But Sabrina tugged on Sterling's sleeve, her voice a sweet plea. Sterling, once we're engaged, I'll be Joe's little aunt-in-law. It's our first time meeting. I'd like to treat my niece to a meal. A faint smile appeared on Sterling's lips. He reached out and pinched Sabrina's cheek. All right, we'll do as you say. Seeing that Sterling had already agreed, I lowered my head with a bitter smile. The refusal I was about to voice caught in my throat. Before we left, my assistant found me a change of clothes, and I could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Just as I was about to have a cup of hot water, Sabrina pouted that she was hungry. Sterling's face darkened with displeasure as he urged me to hurry. I could only swallow the dryness in my throat and follow behind them. Sabrina stopped in front of a lamb restaurant. The strong, gamey smell of lamb filled my nostrils, nearly making me vomit. I never ate lamb. Besides being allergic, I couldn't stand the smell. Sterling, it's a bit cold and rainy today. I'm craving lamb. Sterling paused, opening his mouth but saying nothing. Sabrina stood on her toes and planted a light kiss on his lips. Please. I really want to have lamb. Fine. With a beaming smile, Sabrina served me a whole bowl of lamb. I fought back the urge to throw up, my face pale as I picked up my chopsticks, but I just couldn't bring myself to eat. Joe, do you not like me? Or do you find my chopsticks? Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to use the serving utensils just now. Sabrina looked hurt, her eyes immediately turning red. Seeing this, Sterling's face hardened as he looked at me. Don't be difficult. Eat it. His cold, commanding words made him feel like a stranger. I couldn't help but remember the past. Once, I had accidentally eaten a small piece of lamb, and my tongue had swollen up so badly that I was in the hospital for 3 whole days. From then on, every piece of meat I ate was carefully inspected by Sterling. Not even the tiniest speck of lamb could escape his watchful eye. For all those years, he had truly held me in the palm of his hand, protecting me from any harm. But now, just to make Sabrina happy, he was forcing me to eat an entire bowl of lamb. A sharp pain bloomed in my chest, but I said nothing. I silently picked up a piece of lamb and put it in my mouth. Almost instantly, my tongue began to swell. An intense itching sensation flooded my nerves, and my whole body started to tremble uncontrollably. For me, it was sheer torture. After the meal, Sabrina suggested we go upstairs to watch a movie. I wanted to refuse, but I couldn't speak. I could only shake my head, my eyes red. Then go back by yourself. Sterling left me with that one displeased sentence and put his arm around Sabrina to go buy popcorn. When I got to the hospital, Dr. Charles Miller unleashed a torrent of angry words. You have a severe lamb allergy, don't you know that? And you ate this much. Are you trying to kill yourself? If your uncle finds out, he'll be angry enough to tear my hospital apart. He knows. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Once, my uncle might have really torn down a hospital for me. But now, things were different. Dr. Miller said my health was fragile and strongly insisted I be hospitalized, but I refused. I didn't want to be alone in a cold hospital. It reminded me too much of my parents, lying cold in a hospital 15 years ago. Unable to persuade me, Dr. Miller could only arrange a few more treatments. While my blood was being drawn, my phone vibrated. I clicked on it. It was a message from Sabrina Sinclair. A dozen photos flooded the screen. At a glance, they were all intimate pictures of her and Sterling. From embracing to kissing, Sterling looked deeply affectionate and gentle in every single one. But just as quickly, Sabrina retracted them one by one. Oh dear, Joe, I sent those by mistake. I meant to send them to your uncle so he could pick one for his wallpaper. Sterling's phone wallpaper hadn't changed in over a decade. It was a good luck charm for health and safety, one bearing my name. He used to say he was always praying to the heavens for his little princess to have a life of health and peace. My heart felt no ripples. In the past, I would have cried all night over something like this. But now, it didn't matter. I was leaving anyway. My fingers tapped on the screen as I politely replied, "It's okay." By the time the treatment was over, it was already late at night. My phone vibrated. The screen showed the caller, Aunt Esther Hawthorne. I answered the call while keying in the password to open the door. "Joe, send me your measurements tomorrow. I need them for your custom-made wedding dress." "Okay." Just as I hung up, a man's voice suddenly sounded, startling me so much that the medicine in my hand fell to the floor. "Were you on the phone with my sister? What measurements?" Sterling was sitting on the sofa in the dim light, his expression unreadable, his tone ambiguous. I picked up the medicine, my face unchanging as I explained. "Winter is coming. Aunt Esther wants to buy me some new clothes." Sterling grunted in acknowledgement and didn't pursue the topic. He stood up and walked over to me. His shadow fell over me, and his voice was low and serious. "Why are you home so late? I've told you before you can't be out later than 10. It's dangerous outside." Home. But this home would soon have a new mistress, one who would have no room for me. After all, what woman could tolerate a sister-in-law who had no blood relation to her husband? I stood up straight, meeting Sterling's angry eyes, my tone respectful and obedient. "I know, Uncle Sterling. I was at the hospital today, that's why I'm a bit late. I'll be more careful in the future." Sterling felt a strange sensation. He felt that I had changed. I was abnormally sensible, without any of my former willfulness and flair. It seemed that ever since he got a girlfriend, I had become a different person. He couldn't help but soften his tone, explaining patiently. "Even if I get married, this will always be your home. You can always live here." I tilted my head to look at him. In the dim light, my eyes seemed dull and lifeless. My soft voice was exceptionally clear in the quiet of the night. "Thank you, Uncle Sterling, but I'm grown up now. I'll get married and have my own family too. I won't live here forever. But don't worry, I'll definitely come back to visit you during the holidays." Those words were like dynamite, exploding in Sterling's heart. His mind could no longer remain calm, and his tone was unintentionally tinged with anger. "Get married? Who do you want to marry?" "Jocelyn, are you throwing a tantrum? I said you can always live here, always stay, by my side." Sterling didn't say those last few words. He didn't dare. He was afraid of giving me hope. He was afraid I would once again express my intense love for him, a love he couldn't bear. A fog clouded my eyes. I couldn't quite understand Sterling anymore. Hearing that I was getting married, why wasn't he happy? After all, once I was married, he wouldn't have to worry about me pestering him anymore. I didn't say anything else, just picked up my medicine and went upstairs. Watching my lonely figure retreat, Sterling felt a deep sense of unease for reasons he couldn't explain. Late at night, the itching and pain from my tongue made it impossible for me to sleep. I tossed and turned restlessly. I picked up my phone, opened my social media app, and saw a post from Sterling, the one and only for this life. The accompanying picture was of Sterling and Sabrina sharing a deep kiss beneath a Ferris wheel. In all the time I had known him, this was the first time he had ever posted anything. Sterling never posted online, no matter what. Even if I begged and cried, he would never agree. There were no exceptions, but now his exception had appeared. I stared at the post for a long time before silently tapping the like button. For the next few days, Sterling brought Sabrina Sinclair home with him. One day, they were having a candlelight dinner in the dining room, playing Prince and Princess. The next, they were taking a romantic bath together in the bathroom. The day after, they were having a couple's barbecue in the yard. The villa was filled with traces of their affection and intimate sounds. Every time Sabrina saw me, she would pretend to apologize for disturbing me, and Sterling would affectionately stroke her hair and glance at me with displeasure. Then he would look down at her tenderly and say she didn't need to apologize. I had no time for her self-directed drama. I was busy sorting through everything Sterling had given me over the years, including the small villa in the suburbs of the city. It was his gift for my 18th birthday. Soon, a buyer contacted me, and we arranged to meet at a coffee shop. Looking at the man's clear, amber eyes across the table, I felt a sense of familiarity. The man seemed to be in a hurry to gift it to someone, signing the purchase contract without hesitation. The money was transferred to my card almost immediately. It went much more smoothly than I had imagined. Just as I stepped out of the coffee shop, I ran right into Sterling, who was holding Sabrina's hand. "Joe, what are you doing here?" Sterling's gaze fell on the contract in my hand, his dark eyes seeming to see right through me. A property transfer agreement? What did you sell? My heart seized. A flicker of panic crossed my eyes, but I forced my face to remain calm. A friend asked me to help her look over a sales contract for her house. The excuse was too flimsy. Sterling instantly sensed something was wrong and was about to take the contract from my hand when a motorcycle suddenly roared towards us, its engine deafening. It was about to crash into me and Sabrina, who were standing on the edge of the road. In an instant, Sterling instinctively pulled Sabrina close, tightly cradling her head in his arms to protect her. But I, who hadn't had time to react, was knocked to the ground by the motorcycle. Blood stained my white dress. The contract in my hand flew into the air, fluttering down to the ground. If Sterling had just looked down, he would have seen it was for the villa I had sold. But his eyes remained fixed on Sabrina in his arms. Although Sabrina wasn't hurt, she was crying from the shock. Sterling swept her up into his arms and ran anxiously towards the hospital at the other end of the street. The driver, seeing only one woman left, hopped back on his motorcycle and sped away, leaving me in a cloud of exhaust fumes. Passers-by looked at me with sympathy before one of them called the police and helped get me to a hospital. The doctor gave me more than a dozen stitches and told me I needed to be admitted. Just then, a call came from a colleague. "Supervisor Fairchild, something terrible has happened. I rushed to the company. The first thing I saw was a floor littered with scattered documents, shredded paper, and animal fur flying everywhere. There was hardly a single intact piece of paper in the entire office. Everyone's computer had been smashed to pieces. A chill went down my spine, and I immediately ran to the lab. When I saw that all the reagents had been knocked over, with colorful liquids flowing all over the floor, my mind went blank. The last shred of hope was completely extinguished. It was gone. Everything was gone, a coldness rose from the bottom of my heart, and I couldn't stop trembling. This project contained all my life's work. For a year, I had led the team, working day and night. We were just one data point away from success, from breaking the industry's limits. And now, on the final step before victory, it had been ruthlessly and cruelly destroyed. Woof, 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 two giant golden retrievers, locked in a cage, furiously slammed against the iron bars, making a loud clanging sound. An enraged male colleague picked up a broom from the floor, furious enough to want to end their lives. But before the broom could fall, the two dogs looked at each other and then simply closed their eyes and lay down. Everyone present was dumbfounded. An anxious, sharp female voice from the doorway broke the dead silence in the office. Oscar Nana, what's wrong with you?" The next second, Sabrina Sinclair had thrown herself onto the dog cage. Sabrina frantically shook the cage, large tears rolling down her cheeks. Sterling stepped forward and pulled her into his arms, his face grim as he demanded, "Who locked them in here?" My colleagues exchanged glances, clearly not expecting Sterling's first concern to be the dogs rather than the wrecked office. His furious expression silenced them. I walked up to him, a hint of coldness in my voice. "I did. Mr. Hawthorne, these two dogs destroyed all of our project team's data. The entire project has been ruined by them. Due to the significant financial loss, I request that we call the police." Sabrina knelt down, spreading her arms to protect the two dogs. "Joe, they're just dogs. They don't mean any harm. They didn't do it on purpose. Besides, you've already knocked them out. Why won't you let it go?" A cold sneer touched my lips as I stared into Sabrina's reddened eyes. The dogs don't mean any harm, but what about their owner? Why were two large dogs like this brought into the office building? And how did they so coincidentally destroy our project team's office? Sabrina stood up, looking at me in disbelief, her eyes completely red as she sobbed. "Joe, how could you think of me like that? Why would I do such a thing? The reason these two dogs were brought to the company was because I told her to bring them." Sterling reached out to wipe Sabrina's tears, his voice laced with anger as he commanded, "Jocelyn, you can't speak to Sabrina like that. Apologize to her." I was stunned, my own eyes turning red. My nails dug deep into my palms as I looked at the man before me in disbelief. I felt like I hardly knew him anymore. Was this still the uncle who had always staunchly defended me? Now, for Sabrina's sake, Sterling had become so biased that he was telling me, the victim, to apologize to the perpetrator. My voice trembled as I asked again, unable to believe it. "You want me to apologize to her?" Sterling's face was dark as he coldly repeated, "Apologize." A bitter, broken smile spread across my face. My eyes were bloodshot, and my voice was hoarse and choked with emotion. But I'm the victim. Our project, a whole year's worth of work, was destroyed so easily by her 2 dogs. You know how important this project is to me. You know how many sleepless nights I spent on it. You know all of this. Sterling cut me off, a hint of impatience in his tone. Sabrina didn't do it on purpose. She's your little aunt-in-law. You shouldn't speak to your elders that way, do you understand? I will arrange a new office and new resources for your project, on the condition that you apologize to her. I summoned the last of my strength and bit out each word. No need. Under the shocked and sympathetic gazes of everyone present, I turned and walked out of the devastated office. My phone vibrated. Aunt Esther had sent me a few pictures of wedding dresses, asking me to pick one. I composed myself and casually replied with a 1. A new message popped up in the chat. "Joe, the wedding is just a week away. How are things on your end? It'll all be over soon." Yes. Soon, everything would be over. When I returned to the office, everything had been restored to its original tidiness. But the lost data could never be recovered. Looking at the empty office, a bitter smile touched my lips. At least I wouldn't have to pack up my things. I never thought it would be dealt with in this way. I silently printed out my resignation letter and slipped it between the documents that needed to be signed. I hoped Sterling wouldn't notice. When I walked into the CEO's office, Sabrina was there, pouting with her hands on her hips, still angry about the dogs and refusing to eat breakfast. Sterling held her in his arms, coaxing her to eat porridge spoonful by spoonful. Seeing me, Sterling's previously gentle expression turned cold. "Is there something?" "Mr. Hawthorne, there are a few documents that need your signature." Sterling took the files and flipped through them page by page, signing each one with practiced ease. Soon, he reached the resignation letter. His hand paused, and he was about to take a closer look when Sabrina placed a hand on his, her face full of complaint. "If you keep dividing your attention like this, I'm not drinking this porridge." "All right, I'll stop looking." Sterling didn't look at the document's contents again, quickly signed his name, and put down the pen to pick up the spoon. Seeing the signature on my resignation letter, I let out a breath of relief. As I turned to leave, Sterling's deep voice came from behind me. "Tomorrow, at the Hyatt Hotel, Sabrina and I are getting engaged. Be there." "Okay, I will." My voice was calm, without a flicker of emotion. In the past, I would have been resentful and thrown a tantrum. But now, I only saw Sterling as my uncle. As his niece, I genuinely wished him happiness. That evening, I had a final dinner with my team members. They all knew I was leaving and were very reluctant to see me go, many of them on the verge of tears. When I returned from the restroom, my team was in the middle of an indignant tirade. "Is Mr. Hawthorne some kind of lovesick fool? Don't even get me started on that. Our whole year's work, Miss Fairchild's heart must be broken. Do you think her resignation has something to do with this? Mr. Hawthorne used to be so good to her. If anyone made her even a little unhappy, he'd have them fired. Now I don't know what happened between them." I lowered my eyes, silently looking at the countdown on my phone. 3 days until your wedding. What happened in the past didn't matter anymore. I was leaving. None of it mattered. As we waited for taxis outside the hotel, everyone said their reluctant goodbyes. "What's this about being reluctant to part? Who are you going to miss?" Sterling's deep, somber voice came suddenly from behind us. My team members froze, stammering as they tried to answer. I cut them off. "It's nothing. We just didn't want this delicious meal to end." An unexplainable panic gripped Sterling's heart. He wanted to ask more, but I had already gotten into a taxi with the others. As he watched the taxi drive away, he let out a silent sigh. Once I'm married, he thought, she can finally stay by my side in peace. As family, the grand and splendid Hyatt Hotel was bustling with guests. Just as I walked through the main doors, Sabrina came up to greet me, smiling as she pulled me into a dressing room. "Joe, you're finally here. Hurry up and change. It's about to start." The MC's excited voice boomed, and accompanied by music and flowers, Sabrina slowly walked down the red carpet towards the center of the stage. Just as Sterling reached out to take his fiancée's hand, the dressing room door opened. I stepped out, happening to stop right at Sterling's side. I froze. The dressing room door was only a few steps away from the main stage. The murmurs of the guests below reached my ears. "Who is that? Why is she wearing the same engagement dress as the bride? So, who is Mr. Hawthorne's real fiancé? I know who she is. That's Mr. Hawthorne's niece. Is she trying to marry her own uncle? That's just messed up. How shameless, who knows what she's thinking. I kind of feel sorry for Sabrina Sinclair. What bad luck to have a niece like that. A chill ran through me, my hands and feet turning to ice. I realized I had been set up. Just as I was about to open my mouth to explain and offer my congratulations and a gift, Sabrina beat me to it. Her eyes, red as large tears, like pearls, rolled down her cheeks. Joe, I know you don't like me, but today is your brother's and my engagement day. How could you really? Don't worry. After we're married, everything at home will still be up to you, just like before. You don't have to do this. Her words were like dynamite, igniting the fury of her family and friends. Mrs. Sinclair, who had a notoriously short temper, stood up and pointed a finger at my nose, shouting, "You ill-mannered brat, how dare you try to seduce your own uncle? Didn't your parents teach you any better?" At the mention of my parents, my whole body trembled slightly. My throat felt like it was coated in oil, and I couldn't speak. Sterling's face was grim, his expression cold and severe, his eyes blazing with fury. "That's enough," he roared. "Jocelyn, what are you still standing here for? Get down from here now. Do you think you have any right to wear that dress?" I don't remember how I got out of the hotel. I only remember the fury and disappointment in Sterling's eyes and all the insults and accusations, condemning me for having feelings for my own uncle. The love that had once filled my heart had now become a sword turned against me. That night, Sterling didn't come home. After clearing out everything from my room, I dialed his number. "Uncle Sterling, I'd like to have dinner with you tonight. Don't worry, I won't do anything out of line this time. Fine." Before I could finish, he had already agreed, and then the line went dead. I bought a lot of groceries, all of Sterling's favorite dishes. The dining table had always been filled with my favorites. This time, I planned to cook a feast of his favorites to repay him. After a whole day busy in the kitchen, I was exhausted. I rested my head on the dining table, waiting for Sterling to come home. I woke with a start. The hands on the clock were already approaching 12. I looked at the table of cold food and picked up my phone to call him again. No one answered. The third time I called, the phone was picked up. A scornful, disdainful female voice came through. "Jocelyn, are you a clingy ghost or something? Look at the time, it's midnight. You have such a filthy mind. What could you possibly want with your uncle at this hour? Why don't you come over and say it to our faces in our bed? Jocelyn, if you know what's good for you, stay away from your uncle. You're his niece. A woman should have some shame. It would be better for everyone." I took a deep breath, forcing back tears as I spoke, my voice a little hoarse. "Auntie Sabrina, I really do have something to talk to Uncle Sterling about. Could you please?" Before I could finish, the call was disconnected. I don't know how much longer I waited. Finally, I stood up, threw all the food in the trash, and washed the dishes. On the coffee table, I left a bank card and a wedding gift, and a note, "Uncle Sterling, I'm leaving. I wish you a happy marriage." Pushing my suitcase, I walked out of the villa I had lived in for 15 years. Without a single glance back, I got straight into a taxi. Headed for the airport, headed for a future without Sterling Hawthorne. 2 hours later, the plane landed safely at Linden City Airport. Across the crowd, I spotted my aunt, Esther Hawthorne, waving at me. "Joe, I've missed you to death. Aunt Esther, it's been a while." "I've missed you too." Esther took my suitcase and led me towards the parking lot, grumbling under her breath with dissatisfaction. "It's all because of that wonderful uncle of yours. He watches you like a hawk. I've told him so many times to let you come stay with me for a while, but he just wouldn't agree. He was worried you wouldn't be used to living with me or eating my food. The most ridiculous thing was when he said he was worried you wouldn't be used to the water here. Why didn't he just say he was afraid you were allergic to the air?" Hearing Sterling's name from someone else, my heart was completely calm. I gently patted Esther's resentful shoulder and explained with a placating smile, "Uncle Sterling was just worried about me. From now on, I'll be staying with you, Aunt Esther." Only then did Esther's smile return. Sitting in the driver's seat, she paused just as she was about to start the car. "Speaking of which, Joe, are you sure you don't want to tell your uncle about something as big as your wedding? He raised you. To put it plainly, he's practically half a father to you." I fastened my seatbelt and lowered my gaze, my expression unreadable. Aunt Esther, I wanted to tell him before I left, but he didn't have time to listen. He's busy with his company, and he just got engaged. There's no need to burden him with my affairs. Esther felt that something wasn't right. It wasn't as if his company had only just gotten busy. In the past, if I even had a minor cold, Sterling would be by my side, never leaving. How could he not even have time to listen to me speak now? Esther was about to say more, but she saw that my eyes were closed and my face was etched with fatigue. The words that came out were instead filled with care and concern. You must be tired. We'll be home in 20 minutes. Dinner is all ready, and it's all your favorite dishes. The car slowly drove into the driveway of a small Western-style house, its walls covered in climbing roses. Jo, Esther's daughter, Daisy Weaver, ran out with open arms and gave me a huge hug. My younger cousin had always been fond of me. She chattered away as she pulled me upstairs. Cousin Jo, I missed you so much, Mom, and I decorated this room for you. Do you like it? The room was spacious and bright. Sunlight streamed through a huge floor-to-ceiling window, spilling onto a soft, beige carpet. Everything was decorated according to my tastes. It was the largest room in the house. A warm feeling spread through my chest, and I thanked them from the bottom of my heart. I love it. Thank you, you and Aunt Esther. Silly girl, what are you thanking us for? We're family. I'm so happy you're willing to come and live with us. Esther's smiling voice came from behind me. She couldn't resist giving me another hug. All right, you must be hungry. Let's go downstairs and eat. Watching my retreating figure, Esther's heart was filled with mixed emotions. The tiny little girl in her memory, the one who only knew how to cry, had finally grown up healthy and safe, radiating a dazzling light, like a flower blooming on a cliff's edge, exceptionally brilliant. Over the years, it wasn't just me. Even Esther herself couldn't get over the cold bodies of her sister and brother-in-law when she thought of them late at night. Fortunately, I had pulled through. And fortunately, I had met Sterling Hawthorne. Esther had never imagined that her carefree younger brother would actually fulfill his promise from all those years ago and raise me so well. But since he was about to have his own family, she would take over the duty of protecting my future. That, and the husband she and her sister had personally chosen for me so long ago, would be my unshakable support. Sterling Hawthorne came back from the restroom just in time to see Sabrina Sinclair putting down his phone. He frowned slightly, a hint of displeasure in his voice. Was there a call? A flash of panic crossed Sabrina's eyes, but she quickly broke into a sweet smile. Just a spam call. I hung up for you. Sterling picked up his phone and, seeing no call history, immediately knew Sabrina was lying. But he didn't expose her. He picked up his suit jacket from the back of the chair and started to walk out. A pair of soft, delicate hands clasped his own slightly cool ones. Sabrina took the opportunity to hug him from behind, her voice sweet and seductive. Sterling, where are you going? I don't know how to cut a steak. Can you help me? Sterling pushed her away, disgustedly patting down his jacket. His voice was cold, devoid of any warmth. Don't forget, we're just acting. There's no one else here, so there's no need for a performance. Sabrina's nails dug fiercely into her palms, her eyes simmering with hatred. Sterling dialed my number, only to be met with the cold, mechanical voice of an automated message. A sudden panic seized him. He had promised to have dinner with me today. It really had been a long time since they had eaten together. Sitting in the car, Sterling anxiously opened our chat window. He realized the last message was from a week ago. I had also said I was waiting for him to come home for dinner, but he hadn't replied. He seemed to recall not going home that night. Sterling suddenly realized that ever since Sabrina had appeared, I had been speaking less and less. The number of words I said to him in a week now was less than what I used to say in a single day. After a long hesitation, Sterling finally typed a message in the chat box. Something came up tonight. I'm heading back to have dinner with you now. He took a deep breath, as if mustering up the courage before hitting send. His only response was a glaring red exclamation mark. The fingers gripping his phone turned almost white. Shock and rage flooded his heart. The small pear tart on the seat beside him was angrily swiped to the floor, and the sweet scent instantly filled the car. Sterling laughed, a laugh born of pure fury. For such a small thing, Jocelyn actually dared to block him. He had spoiled her rotten. Drive faster, the assistant flinched at Sterling's roar and silently pressed harder on the accelerator. She couldn't help but shiver, remembering the last time she saw her boss this angry was 3 years ago when Supervisor Fairchild had a cold. Had she gotten sick again from being caught in the rain? The moment the car stopped, Sterling stormed into the villa like a tornado. Seeing no one in the living room, he headed straight for my room on the second floor. The second he pushed the door open, he froze completely. The room was empty. The wardrobe, the desk, the bookshelves all bare. Everything related to me was gone. The once cozy pink bed was now just a stark, gray-white mattress. An unprecedented wave of panic washed over Sterling. He kicked the desk violently. Looking down, a bright red box in the corner caught his eye. There seemed to be a card on top of it. As if he had found a lifeline, Sterling trembled as he bent down and picked up the card. The card was small enough for only one line of text. "Uncle Sterling, I'm leaving. I wish you a happy marriage." The card that had been a saving grace just a moment ago instantly became a dagger. It completely shattered the last bit of hope in his heart. Sterling angrily overturned the box, and a pair of beautiful crystal phoenix and dragon figurines rolled out. The clattering sound was particularly piercing to his ears. He picked up the gift, raised it high above his head, and then smashed it violently onto the ground, a shower of sparkling crystal shards scattering everywhere. She actually left. What wedding gift? He didn't need it. Why? How could she leave? All he wanted was for Jocelyn to be by his side forever. Blood rushed backward through Sterling's veins. His eyes were bloodshot as he frantically searched every corner of the room, as if expecting me to appear at any moment, smiling and greeting him. He didn't believe it. Joe must be playing a joke on him. He couldn't believe I would really leave so quietly. After a long search, Sterling finally sat on the floor, drained of all strength. The shards of glass cut his palm, and blood began to flow, but he didn't seem to feel any pain. Looking at the empty room, his heart felt as if it had been viciously carved out, throbbing with excruciating pain. Sterling suddenly realized that I was truly gone. Without Jocelyn, his heart was completely empty. It felt as if his very existence had lost its meaning. How had it come to this? He couldn't be without Jocelyn. A flash of light went through his mind. Sterling immediately picked up his phone and called his assistant. "Go and confirm right now, did Jocelyn not come to the company today?" There was a pause on the other end before a respectful voice replied. "No, Supervisor Fairchild has already resigned. Didn't you know, Mr. Hawthorne?" Sterling's mind went blank, his voice sounding so faint it was as if it wasn't his own. "When?" 3 days ago. Supervisor Fairchild submitted her resignation letter to the HR department. It had your signature on it, so HR processed her resignation according to procedure. A memory of a resignation letter flashed through his mind. He had hastily signed his name at the time, thinking it was just a regular employee's resignation. Sterling could never have imagined that it would be Jocelyn's resignation letter. When a member of the research department wanted to resign, they had to personally bring the letter to him for his signature. This was a rule he himself had set, yet he had forgotten it. Research? Sterling scrambled up from the floor and ran frantically outside. He didn't believe I would resign. He didn't believe I would give up the experiment I had been working on for 3 years. That was my obsession, my dream for all these years. Sterling floored the accelerator, racing to the office building at top speed, and burst into my office. He flicked on the light. The first thing he saw was the stark white walls. The room was completely empty. There was nothing, not even a single hair on the floor. Sterling closed his eyes in despair, his body losing all strength as he slid down the wall to the floor. His head rested limply against the wall, his brow furrowed as if he were searching for any trace of my scent. He couldn't find me anywhere. Where on earth had I gone? When the research department members came to work, they were startled to see Sterling with his bloodshot eyes. Sterling's voice was frighteningly hoarse, like a man dying of thirst in the desert. "Supervisor Fairchild, has she really resigned? Then, what about the project she's been working on for 3 years? Are you still in contact with her?" The team members looked at each other. The youngest, a young man, spoke up in confusion. "Didn't you know, Mr. Hawthorne? We had a farewell dinner for the department that night, and we even ran into you at the hotel entrance. Supervisor Fairchild hasn't contacted us since. But don't worry, Mr. Hawthorne, she handed over all her work very clearly." As my little fangirl, Nina Fields couldn't hold back any longer. She had been furious last time and wanted an explanation and justice, but I had stopped her. Nina stepped forward, her face filled with anger. Every word she spoke a testament to the injustice I had suffered. Mr. Hawthorne, the project that Supervisor Fairchild spent 5 whole years on, was destroyed by your beloved's dogs. Have you forgotten? Do you know how devastated she was that night? I've known her for 5 years, and that was the first time I've ever seen her so hopeless. When I found her, the table was covered in empty wine bottles. Her sleeves were soaked with tears. She was so drunk she was barely conscious, and she kept muttering about the experimental data. Was that really what happened? Every word was like a whip, lashing mercilessly at Sterling's shattered heart. After a long silence, Sterling spoke again, his voice hoarse and soft, as if he were talking to himself. "So, you're blaming me now?" Nina wanted to say more, but she was pulled back by the assistant, who was frantically giving her a look. Like a lost soul, Sterling stumbled out of the office building. He didn't know how long he walked. He crouched by the side of the road, the warm yellow light of a street lamp shining down on him, casting a shadow on the cold ground. It wasn't until his feet were completely numb that a memory of my panicked eyes flashed through his mind. With trembling hands, Sterling took out his phone, found Esther Hawthorne's number, and immediately dialed it. The moment the call connected, before he could even speak, he was hit with a barrage of words from the other end. "Something important at this hour? Are you calling me because of Joe? I mean, come on, little brother, it's not that serious. She's only been gone a day and you're already missing her this much. Relax, the air in Linden City isn't poisonous, and she's not having any trouble adjusting. She's doing great here with me." Knowing my whereabouts, Sterling's nerves, which had been stretched taut with worry and anger all night, finally relaxed a little. Thank God, Joe was okay. As long as he knew where I was, he could go and bring me back. Besides, it was just in the next city over. Esther's dissatisfied voice continued from the other end of the line. "If you're calling to ask her to come back, I'm telling you, no way she just got here. And besides," Esther's tone changed, taking on a teasing note, "you're about to have your own happy event. You're going to be a family man soon. You can't be orbiting around Joe all day. Aren't you afraid your future wife will get jealous? Joe is being so considerate. She knows she needs to be mindful of you and doesn't want to be a bother anymore." Sterling's heart tightened. To him, those words meant something else entirely. Jocelyn didn't need him anymore. That's why she left him. Sterling's body tensed up again. He desperately tried to suppress the storm raging inside him, not wanting to reveal too much of his emotions to Esther. He forced himself to speak calmly. "Sister, can you let me talk to Joe for a few minutes?" There was a moment of silence on the other end, followed by a voice filled with poorly concealed evasion. "It's so late, Joe needs to rest. Let's do it some other time." Then the call was disconnected. Sterling glanced at the time. It was still a long way from my usual bedtime. A thick sense of unease washed over him again. His heart pounded violently. He couldn't calm down, couldn't wait another second. He just wanted to see me immediately. Sterling booked a flight to Linden City right away, and immediately got into a taxi headed for the airport. The mechanical voice of the airport broadcast repeated its announcement. "We regret to inform you that the flight to Linden City has been delayed due to weather. The new departure time is yet to be determined." In the bright VIP lounge, Sterling Hawthorne's face was ashen as he collapsed onto the floor. Having not slept all night, the dark circles under his eyes were alarming. A flight attendant, noticing his poor complexion, approached to ask if he needed help, but he seemed not to hear her, as if the outside world had ceased to exist. Sterling closed his eyes, and memories flooded his mind. From the little girl with no light in her eyes, crouching in a corner of the hospital morgue, to the girl who, for the first time, offered him a white rabbit candy and smiled at him. And then, to the bright, radiant girl with pigtails, standing in the sunlight. His heart couldn't help but tremble and rejoice with her, a smile unconsciously forming on his lips. The scene shifted. A table full of empty bottles. The girl's once vibrant, smiling face became dim and withdrawn, silent and somber, her head bowed on the table as she sobbed. Sterling's heart felt as if it had been pierced by a sharp sword, the intense pain making it almost impossible for him to breathe. He snapped his eyes open, gasping for air. His mind was a mess. The events of the past few weeks played out in his head like a list of crimes. Sterling suddenly realized that his deliberate act had unintentionally caused me deep harm. Harming me was never his intention. How could he bear to hurt the girl he had personally nurtured and protected as she grew up? He had just been scared, flustered. The moment I confessed my feelings to him, his heart had pounded faster than ever before. The last shred of reason had made him push the blushing girl away. Their relationship couldn't be allowed to develop. He couldn't betray his sister's memory. In the end, he rejected me. But he hadn't expected me to be so resilient to express my love with even greater fervor. He felt like he was being roasted over a fire. One part of his heart basking in my abundant love, while the other desperately tried to hold back, to not take another step forward. The name Hawthorne was a constant reminder that the Hawthorne family had given him a second life. My mother was not only his benefactor, but also his sister. He couldn't be with his sister's daughter in that way. Their relationship was wrong. After a long struggle, Sterling decided to use a fake marriage to make me back down. To get everything back on track, back to the way it was before. Then he could, just like before, openly protect me as my uncle. He could take care of me every day, and I would stay by his side forever. But he had forgotten that I was the girl he had spoiled. How could I be willing to share his love with someone else? And how could I bear the unintentional pain he was causing me? Sterling covered his face, his muffled sobs heavy with anguish. It seemed he was about to lose the girl he had raised. He stared blankly at the ceiling, not having slept a wink all night. The morning sun cast a warm glow on the pale yellow duvet, filling the room with warmth. This was the most peaceful night's sleep I had had in the past month. My face showed a relaxation I hadn't felt in a long time. I stretched my arms out, joyfully embracing the morning. As I walked to the dining room on the first floor, the rich, enticing aroma of food successfully awakened my appetite. I walked to the dining table. The variety of breakfast dishes made me lean in for a sniff. It smelled wonderful, and it was all my favorite things. I looked up happily, and a sharp, exquisitely handsome face came into my line of sight. My pupils dilated slightly, my face showing undisguised surprise. Julian Rutherford, what are you doing here?" Julian Rutherford put down the plate in his hand and looked at me with a half smile, raising an eyebrow. "You know who I am?" I composed my expression and answered without any exaggeration. "In our circle, is there anyone who doesn't know you?" Thinking back, Julian Rutherford had always been in my circle. From high school to university, we attended the same schools. I often heard his name. Teachers praised him as a once-in-a-century genius, and girls would blush and chase after him. Of course, that didn't include me. In the upper echelons of society, Julian was known for his decisive and ruthless methods. No one dared to cross him. In the business world, he was known as the Reaper. At a young age, he already controlled more than half of Linden City's resources. Rutherford Enterprises, which Julian managed, was a rival to Sterling's Hawthorne Corp. To fully understand the competition, I would also follow news about Rutherford Enterprises, and Julian's name and photo often appeared in the headlines. Therefore, I recognized the man in the apron in front of me almost instantly. But why would someone like him be in my house? A faint smile touched Julian's lips. He pointed to the apron he was wearing and spoke slowly and calmly. "I'm making breakfast." His composed demeanor made me feel a little less composed myself. "Cousin Joe, you're awake." Daisy Weaver ran over and gave me a big hug. Looking up, she met Julian's unfriendly gaze. Daisy froze, quickly letting go of me and stammering. Brother-in-law, you're here." "Brother-in-law?" I was startled. I thought Daisy had misunderstood our relationship and was about to explain when Esther's voice cut in. "Julian, you're here. Oh, I just remembered we have some unfinished business, so we'll be leaving first." Esther walked over, grabbed Daisy, and pulled her back, a matchmaker's grin spreading across her face. "You two get to know each other. Cultivate your relationship." With that, she whisked Daisy away like a gust of wind, leaving the two of us alone in the large house. Cultivate our relationship? The man I was going to marry was Julian Rutherford. I was still reeling from the shock, staring blankly at the man in front of me. A strong nose, deep eyes, soft, red lips. I suddenly understood all those girls who screamed and chased after him. "Like what you see?" "Yes, very much." Suddenly realizing what I'd said, my cheeks flushed, and I awkwardly looked away. I picked up a glass of soy milk, trying to hide my discomposure, my heart pounding violently. A magnetic chuckle came from above me. "Why'd you stop looking? It's free. You can look for as long as you want." A sandwich was placed on my empty plate. Julian's light voice was tinged with amusement. I heard that culinary skills are an essential part of being a husband. Would Miss Fairchild please test whether my cooking passes the inspection? My face grew even redder. I mechanically lifted my fork and put the food in my mouth. The taste of toasted bread mixed with the savory flavor of egg and ham danced on my tongue. Sensing an expectant gaze on me, I didn't dare look up, but I offered my sincere praise. It's delicious. The morning garden was filled with the chirping of birds and the buzzing of cicadas. The flowers stretched out to greet the rising sun. I closed my eyes, savoring the fresh air. The sweet scent of flowers drifted into my nose, filling me with delight. Julian walked silently beside me, a smile playing on his lips. Ah, a fat, green caterpillar suddenly dropped from above, startling me so much that I stumbled backward. Tripping on a stone, I lost my balance and was about to fall. With lightning-fast reflexes, Julian wrapped an arm around my waist, and I fell into his embrace. Feeling the warmth of his body, I froze, my mind suddenly going blank. Let her go with a furious roar, a fist came flying through the air, landing squarely on Julian's face. Julian staggered back 2 steps in pain. Julian Rutherford, you're despicable. You'll stoop to any means for your company, won't you? I'm warning you, stay away from Jocelyn. She's not someone you can touch. Sterling pulled me back to his side, his grip so tight I almost lost my footing. But in his anger, he didn't notice. He turned his head to look at me, his tone accusatory, mixed with some other unidentifiable emotion. Joe, how could you be so intimate with a strange man? Don't let it happen again. My brown eyes were wide with surprise. Uncle Sterling, what are you doing here? If I hadn't come, who knows what would have happened between you and another man, having not slept all night. The worry, sadness, and regret that had been building up in Sterling's heart now all turned into rage. I pulled my hand from Sterling's grasp, my gaze falling on the blood trickling from the corner of Julian's mouth. I slowly walked over to Julian's side, standing opposite Sterling. Uncle Sterling, you've misunderstood. Julian isn't that kind of person. We weren't talking about business, don't worry. I took out a tissue and carefully dabbed at the blood on Julian's mouth. Hiss! Does it hurt a lot? Concern and guilt almost spilled from my eyes. This gesture nearly drove Sterling insane. He fought to suppress his towering rage, his face grim as he spoke in a low voice. Jocelyn, come here. Come back to Seacliff City with me. I turned my head, a fog clouding my eyes. I didn't understand why Sterling had come looking for me, and I understood even less why he wanted me to go back. My leaving should have been a weight off his shoulders. He could be with Sabrina Sinclair without any more worries. I didn't beat around the bush and asked him directly, go back to Seacliff City for what? Because your home is in Seacliff City. Your work is in Seacliff City. Sterling frowned, his assertive tone filled with a hint of displeasure. I turned back to check on Julian's injury, my voice light. My home is in Linden City, and Uncle, have you forgotten? I've already resigned. Sterling wearily rubbed his temples, his tone softening. Stop making a scene. Come back with me. I'll give you a brand new lab, better than the old one. I was wrong before. I'll make it up to you. Hearing this belated apology, I felt nothing. An apology meant nothing to me. It couldn't bring back the data from 5 years of hard work, nor could it soothe the pain I had already endured. I looked at Sterling's bloodshot eyes and spoke slowly and calmly. It's all right, Uncle. It's all in the past. You don't need to worry about it. Besides, I won't be going back to Linden City. My reputation there is already ruined. I don't want to go back and have people pointing fingers at my back and cursing me. I don't want to be called shameless for seducing my own uncle. I didn't say that part out loud. My fiancé was standing right next to me. Sterling's face grew darker, his eyes filled with a somber haze and guilt. Just as he was about to explain, my calm, cool voice sounded again. Uncle Sterling, you should go back to Seacliff City. Auntie Sabrina is waiting for you. I have Aunt Esther here, so you don't need to worry. I wish you a happy marriage. These words were like a sharp sword, piercing deep into Sterling's heart. Hearing me tell him to leave, the last of his reasons snapped. He roared, as if using all his strength. Don't call me Uncle Sterling, I am not your uncle, and don't mention that woman. I froze, guessing that he and Sabrina must have had some sort of disagreement. Suddenly, Esther's puzzled voice came from behind us. If you're not her uncle, what are you? Are you trying to be her father? Unaware of the situation, Esther slapped a hand on Sterling's shoulder. She had expected him to show up and was now impatiently trying to shoo him away. "Don't be so dramatic. You're not worried about Joe staying with me, are you? Aren't you about to get married? Shouldn't you be with your fiancé? Aren't you afraid she'll get mad? All right, if there's nothing else, you should hurry back to Seacliff City. You must have a lot of work to deal with at your company." Sterling's face was grim. He didn't know how to explain. It wouldn't be easy to take me away from his sister, especially since I didn't want to leave, but he couldn't give up on me. Esther noticed the cut on Julian's face and her temper flared. "Sterling, Hawthorne, did you do this? You apologize to me right now." Julian frowned as if in great pain, but his words were sensible and obedient. "It's all right, Auntie. It's not Uncle's fault." Hearing him use those terms of address, Sterling's fists clenched so tightly the veins on his hands bulged. When he looked up, he saw that I was already helping Julian walk away. Sterling started to chase after us but was held back by Esther. "What do you think you're doing? Wasn't one punch enough? Why does he get to call you Auntie and me Uncle? Is he trying to mock me?" Esther was about to explain, but suddenly remembered my earlier request. Sterling still didn't know that I was about to get married. She hesitated, then made up a random excuse. "I've watched him grow up since he was a child. He's like my own kid. He means no harm. Don't overthink it." I found the first aid kit, pulled out iodine and ointment, and carefully dabbed them on the corner of the man's mouth. Seeing Julian wince, I became even more gentle. "Why didn't you tell Uncle Sterling about our relationship?" A flicker of darkness crossed Julian's dark eyes. Esther hadn't noticed, but Julian, who had been navigating the cutthroat business world since he was young and had a deep and subtle mind, had guessed the unusual nature of my relationship with Sterling the moment he saw him. It wasn't just familial affection. Julian took the bottle of medicine from my hand and set it down. He leaned in slightly, looking seriously into my eyes. "You didn't seem ready. I thought I'd wait for you, to be ready to tell everyone yourself. Jocelyn, even though ours is an arranged marriage, I don't want you to feel unhappy or uncomfortable." Sunlight streamed through the window, falling on Julian. The sharp line of his jaw seemed to soften. It was as if he were bathed in a golden filter. I suddenly felt that Julian possessed a charm that made it hard to look away. A small smile played on my lips, my grateful words tinged with a hint of tenderness. "Thank you, Julian Rutherford." The next morning, I was woken by the aroma of food. I followed the scent downstairs, wondering what time Julian had arrived this morning and what new dishes he had prepared. As I stepped off the last stair, the sight of 2 full tables of breakfast made me freeze in place. Sterling and Julian, both wearing aprons, were meticulously arranging breakfast on their respective tables. Sterling, the first to notice me, forced a smile onto his tired face, his voice hoarse. "Joe, didn't you say you wanted seafood porridge? I woke up at 4 this morning to make it for you. Come and see if it tastes the same as before." This was the first time Sterling had made me breakfast since Sabrina appeared. A breakfast made by Sterling's own hands, once a daily occurrence, was now a rarity. The porridge, slowly simmered with fresh seafood, was indeed delicious, my favorite. The last time, when my allergies had ruined my appetite and left me with a stomachache, I had craved this very seafood porridge. I had begged Sterling, but he had coldly said he had to pick up Sabrina and had no time. Now that I had chosen to leave, giving all his time to Sabrina, why was he suddenly so eager to please? Julian took off his apron, his dark eyes reflecting my image. "I made soup dumplings today. See if they taste the same as the ones from that shop near our high school." Without hesitation, I nodded lightly. "Okay." Watching me walk straight towards the other man, Sterling couldn't help but reach out and grab my arm, his voice almost pleading. "Joe, just one bite, please." I pulled my hand away without turning around, my voice tinged with a coldness I couldn't suppress. "Thank you, Uncle Sterling, but my allergies haven't cleared up yet. The doctor said I can't have seafood." Sterling stood there, stunned, watching as I sat down next to another man, a brilliant smile on my face, a smile he hadn't seen in a long time. A mix of emotions churned within him, his face turning frighteningly dark. "You're still here? Wow, you made a lot of breakfast, huh?" Esther walked over to the table in surprise and sat down, waving for Daisy to join them. "Your cooking skills are really impressive. No wonder Joe used to praise you so much." Seeing Sterling standing there, glaring at the other table, Esther pulled him over and lowered her voice. "Don't disturb them. This is between the young people. Don't interfere." Sterling's already gloomy face darkened further, his eyes filled with a somber haze. The desire in his heart grew like a wild weed, threatening to consume him completely. "Hey, Uncle Sterling, this fried egg is heart-shaped." Daisy's clear voice was tinged with a teasing, gossipy tone. Esther immediately seized the opportunity to shoo him away, raising her voice. She really didn't want this high-wattage third wheel here. "Oh, missing your wife-to-be? If you miss her, then go back to her. I just don't understand why a man who's about to get married is still hanging around our house." This time, Sterling didn't remain silent. His hoarse voice was thick with sorrow. "I can't live without Joe. Jocelyn has to come back with me. She needs to stay by my side." The two dining tables were not far apart, and every word reached my ears clearly. My hand, holding the glass of soy milk, tightened unconsciously, my fingers turning slightly red. I had never thought Sterling would be so insistent on me returning. Was it for the company? My hand was suddenly empty. Julian took the soy milk from me and placed a fried egg on my plate. It was heart-shaped. A flicker of surprise crossed my eyes. I never thought the usually serious and cold, chosen one would resort to such a cliché. "Sterling, don't go too far. Anyone who knows you knows you're Joe's uncle, but anyone who doesn't would think you're her husband," watching her so closely. "Besides, you have your own family now. You can't be hovering around Joe all day. It's not appropriate." Esther put down her chopsticks, her usual teasing tone gone, replaced by a seriousness tinged with displeasure. Her patience had finally run out. At first, she had understood Sterling's overprotective, fatherly feelings. But gradually, she realized his possessiveness was abnormally strong. It wasn't the normal concern of an elder for a younger relative, but rather the control of a partner. Sterling seemed not to hear her, saying nothing. His gaze remained fixed on me, his gloomy eyes having already mentally tortured Julian 1,000 times over. He kept wondering why I, who had never had any male friends, would suddenly become so close to Julian Rutherford. Losing her patience, Esther dragged Sterling out of the room. The intense gaze on me finally disappeared, and I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. After a satisfying meal, I went to the lakeside. The chirping of birds, the scent of flowers, and the gentle breeze from the lake filled me with a sense of pure joy. I closed my eyes, every cell in my body feeling blissful. When I opened them again, I saw another person reflected in the water. Uncle Sterling. My polite and distant demeanor sent a pang of pain through Sterling's heart. "Don't call me uncle, can you? You used to just call me by my name." I didn't speak, my gaze lowered to the lake, a sense of confusion in my eyes. I didn't understand why Sterling had suddenly changed. Just a week ago, he had berated me for not respecting my elders, and insisted I call him uncle. Sterling breathed in the familiar scent of gardenia from me and felt a long-lost sense of peace. "Joe, come back to Seacliff City with me. I'll set up a new lab for you, with the best equipment and researchers. Don't worry, this time I've installed a password-protected door on the lab. No one will be able to destroy your work again. I'll cook for you every day from now on, just like before, okay?" I continued to gaze at the lake, my tone as calm as its surface. "Uncle, I can only call you uncle. You said so yourself." Sterling spoke anxiously, his hands gripping my shoulders. "But we're not related by blood. I'm not your real uncle. You said it yourself, we could have another kind of relationship." I paused. I hadn't expected him to remember, but it didn't matter anymore. Those were the words of a naive young girl. It was better if they were forgot. I spoke slowly, using his own words from that day, my tone as cold and devoid of warmth as his had been. "Uncle Sterling, between us, there can only be a familial relationship. There is no other possibility." After a pause, I made a decision. I would tell him about my wedding. "Uncle Sterling, we're not young anymore. We can't go on like we used to. You'll be getting married and starting a new family soon, and before I could finish, a sweet, feminine voice interrupted. "Joe." Sabrina Sinclair walked over, subtly squeezing me aside to sit between us. "Joe, I haven't seen you in a few days. You look much better. It seems the air and water in Linden City suit you." She leaned on Sterling's shoulder, lightly patting his arm in a show of dissatisfaction. "Sterling, you're too much. Why didn't you tell me you were coming to Linden City to see Joe? You had me worried sick for days." You could have told me, and we could have come together and brought some of Seacliff City's specialties for Joe. Sterling's face darkened, and he shifted slightly, causing Sabrina's head to slip off his shoulder. What are you doing here? Sabrina froze, clearly not expecting Sterling to be so cold. She took his hand again, her voice sweet and irresistible. I was worried about you, of course. Didn't you say you wanted to be by my side every moment? Not wanting to disturb them, I silently stood up to leave, but my sleeve was caught. Sabrina stood up too and pulled me into an unsolicited hug. Joe, why are you leaving as soon as I arrive? I've missed you these past few days. I'm going to be your little aunt-in-law soon, you know. You should talk to me more, or is it that you don't like me? The sudden warmth of her embrace left me at a loss. It was true, I didn't like Sabrina. But it was only because her dogs had destroyed the life's work of my entire department. That was all. But for the sake of her being my future aunt-in-law, I wasn't going to press the matter. I was willing to give Sterling that much respect. Ah, a scream, followed by a splash, broke the tranquility of the lake. Sabrina had somehow suddenly fallen into the water and was flailing her arms, crying out. Help me, Sterling. Please don't blame Joe. Cough, cough, it was my own fault, I wasn't careful. A flicker of cold indifference crossed my eyes. I had no interest in participating in these childish games and turned to walk away. Suddenly, a hand gripped my shoulder from behind. I turned to meet Sterling's worried eyes. Joe, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere? His anxious gaze swept over me, checking for injuries. When he saw the few drops of water splashed on my clothes, he took the fabric in his hands and started rubbing it. Let me dry this for you. Your constitution is so weak, you can't afford to catch a cold. I looked down at the anxious man, my peripheral vision catching sight of Sabrina still struggling in the water. In her, I saw a reflection of myself, the me who had been drenched to the bone, yet completely ignored by Sterling. Why did Sterling never see the person who was soaked through? This was the first time in months that, between Sabrina and me, he had chosen me. But I had grown accustomed to Sterling's affection for Sabrina, so I was now utterly confused. Why wasn't he saving Sabrina from the water? I pulled my clothes from his grasp and took 2 steps back, putting distance between us. There's no need to trouble yourself, Uncle Sterling. It's just a little water. You should hurry and save my aunt-in-law. It looks like Auntie Sabrina is about to go under. A weight settled on my shoulders. A man's suit jacket, still warm, was draped over me. I looked up. Julian was standing against the light, his dark eyes shining, the sharp line of his jaw softened. Let's go home, Joe. Okay, let's go home. Sterling watched us turn and leave, his fists clenched so tight they looked like they would shatter. He started to follow, wanting to shove Julian away, unwilling to allow another man near me. The volcano in his heart erupted, consuming him completely. Help, save me, Sterling! The weakening cries for help forced him to retract his step, and he could only watch as we walked away. Gritting his teeth, Sterling turned and jumped into the river. The Hawthorne Villa. I just adore Jocelyn. Julian is so lucky to have her. Mrs. Rutherford smiled warmly as she opened an exquisite wooden box and took out a jade bracelet of exceptional quality. She took my hand and slipped the bracelet onto my wrist. Joe, from now on, if Julian ever dares to make you unhappy, you just tell me. I'll be sure to teach him a lesson for you. Julian noticed my nervousness and gently patted my shoulder, raising an eyebrow at his mother. Mom, you won't get the chance. Seeing Julian and his mother flanking me protectively, Esther Hawthorne finally felt a sense of relief. The Rutherford and Fairchild families had been friends for generations. Before I was even born, our families had arranged our engagement. After my parents' accident, Esther had approached the Rutherfords to cancel the betrothal. But the Rutherfords insisted the engagement would always stand. They were willing to wait for the day I agreed. Julian was 3 years older than me and had long reached marriageable age, but he had always refused any blind dates or arranged marriages. This childhood engagement was the only one he acknowledged. I didn't know this, but Esther did. Julian Rutherford had waited many years for me. Tears welled in Esther's eyes as she smiled and said, with a hint of a threat, Julian, then your auntie will entrust Joe to you. If you dare to let her suffer any grievance, I will never let you off the hook. Before Julian could reply, a sudden, angry male voice broke the warm, harmonious atmosphere. Who are you entrusting Joe to? Sterling rushed into the center of the living room, looking in disbelief at me. sitting between Julian and his mother, and at the room full of gifts tied with red ribbons. His mind exploded as if struck by lightning, his body trembling violently. He pointed a finger at the people on the sofa, using all his strength to roar, "What are you all doing? I don't approve, all of you. Get out, Mr. Hawthorne SR." Immediately stood up, leaning on his cane. "Sterling Hawthorne, have you lost your mind?" "Lost my mind." "Without my permission, Jocelyn can't marry anyone she can't get married," seeing Sterling's out-of-control state. Even someone as slow on the uptake as Esther would have understood everything. Her suspicions confirmed, she looked at her younger brother in shock. This was the first time in so many years that I had seen Sterling like this. I thought he was angry that I hadn't discussed my marriage with him. I stood up and met his furious eyes, explaining calmly, "Uncle Sterling, this marriage was arranged by my parents when I was a child. I trust their and Aunt Esther's judgment. Besides, Julian really is a very good person." After a pause, I added, "I'm willing." Those few words were a fatal blow to Sterling. The mountain of societal convention that had weighed on his heart suddenly crumbled into ruins. His desires burst forth like a flood. He could no longer control himself. The last vestiges of his reason were washed away. At that moment, Sterling finally saw his own heart clearly. He no longer cared about what others thought. All he knew was that he wanted to be with me, forever and always. Seeing his dark, explosive expression, Esther used all her strength to pull him out of the room. I smiled at the Hawthorne elders and the Rutherfords, explaining away the small incident. In the hallway, Esther raised her hand and slapped Sterling hard across the face. "Sterling Hawthorne, how could you fall in love with your own niece? How can you face her mother? How can you face your sister?" A red mark appeared on Sterling's face, but his voice was filled with deep-seated resentment. "But we're not related by blood. Instead of giving her to a stranger, why can't that person be me? I'm the one who raised her, bit by bit. She's been by my side all these years." Sterling looked at Esther, the fire of his desire burning fiercely in his eyes, his voice hoarse. "Sister, I want to marry Jo. I'm the one who knows her best, who loves her most." The man's stubbornness made Esther's anger surge again. She raised her hand once more. Sterling looked at her with bloodshot eyes, unmoving, as if he wouldn't give up until he got a satisfactory answer. Her raised hand stopped in mid-air. Esther took a deep breath to calm herself. After a long while, she finally spoke, her eyes shimmering. "Sterling, have you forgotten? You're getting married too. You no longer have the right to marry Jo. In fact, I mentioned this marriage to Jo many times over a year ago, but she never agreed. It wasn't until a month ago that she suddenly relented. Think about it. Why do you think that is?" Sterling's head snapped up, a glimmer of light in his bloodshot eyes. His voice rose. "So, Jo only agreed to get married because I was getting married?" Esther's gaze rested on the distant mountains, veiled by clouds. She didn't answer. If I had told her from the beginning that the person I wanted to marry was Sterling, Esther wouldn't have objected. All she wanted was my happiness. But now, Esther could see that I had completely let Sterling go. The person I was now willing to marry was Julian Rutherford. To prevent Sterling from doing anything else out of line, from ruining my wedding and the relationship between the two families, Esther had to placate him for now. Once the wedding was successfully held in 3 days, she would persuade him to accept the reality. "Sterling, Jo's wedding isn't happening right away. You go back and handle your own affairs first." To Sterling, this meant something else entirely. If he went back and broke off his engagement, I would naturally break off mine as well. After all, the person I loved was him, Sterling Hawthorne, not Julian Rutherford. With red-rimmed eyes, Sterling looked back at me one last time, then immediately bought a ticket back to Seacliff City. "Wait for me, Jo." Watching his retreating back, Esther let out a heavy sigh. If she had known it would come to this, she should never have entrusted me to him in the first place. She blamed herself for her carelessness. After all, they weren't related by blood. It was only natural for a man and a woman living together to develop feelings for each other over time. Late that night, Sterling and Sabrina landed at Seacliff City Airport. Just as Sabrina was about to get into the car with Sterling to go back to the villa, he closed the car door. As she stood there stunned, she heard the man's deep voice. "Your birthday is in 2 days. I'll host a party to celebrate." The car sped away, leaving Sabrina's eyes gleaming in the dark. 2 days later, at the Hawthorne Villa, all of Seacliff City's high society had gathered. The corners of the room were piled high with all sorts of expensive gifts. "What do you think Mr. Hawthorne will give Miss Sinclair for her birthday today?" "I bet it's a villa or a luxury car," Chester Sinclair scoffed, rolling his eyes in disdain. "You all have such small imaginations. Mr. Hawthorne loves my sister so much, he wouldn't give her such vulgar, superficial things. They're getting married soon. I bet he'll give my sister half of Hawthorne Corp's shares. After all, if he wants to marry my sister, he has to show some sincerity, right?" At this, the crowd exchanged glances, shock evident in their eyes. Half of Hawthorne Corp's shares was equivalent to giving the entire company to Sabrina. As the music started, Sabrina, wearing a custom-made gown encrusted with diamonds and exuding an air of nobility, slowly descended the stairs. Sterling followed behind her, holding the train of her dress. A jewelry enthusiast in the crowd exclaimed, "Look at Miss Sinclair's necklace, isn't that the priceless Star of Hope?" So Mr. Hawthorne was the one who splurged $100 million to buy it. It seems he really loves Miss Sinclair. Seeing this, the Sinclair family members standing to the side straightened their backs. Mrs. Sinclair wore a proud smile, her chin held so high it nearly touched the ceiling as she accepted the flattery and fawning of the crowd. The Sinclair family was finally having their moment. In the aristocratic circles of Seacliff City, the Sinclairs had always been at the bottom, ignored by everyone. In the past, they would never have been qualified to attend such a banquet. Sabrina stood in front of an 18-layer cake and, amidst the chorus of well wishes, closed her eyes to make a wish. When she opened them, she leaned in and unexpectedly kissed Sterling. The crowd erupted in cheers. No one noticed the deep-seated disgust in Sterling's eyes. "Sabrina, this is a gift from your brother." Chester handed Sabrina a property transfer agreement. Looking at the photos on the front page, Sabrina covered her mouth in surprise. "Wow, what a beautiful villa, thank you, brother." Flipping to the last page of the contract, a familiar name came into view. Jocelyn Fairchild. Sabrina froze. The contract was suddenly snatched from her hands. Sterling's face was dark, his fingers gripping the contract so tightly they nearly tore through it. "Sell this villa to me." While others were clueless, Sabrina Sinclair knew exactly what was going on. A flash of venom crossed her eyes before being replaced by a sweet smile. She blushed and said coyly, "If Sterling wants it, he'll have to trade something else for it." The crowd's teasing grew louder. "All right," Sterling said. A cold smirk appeared on his lips, which the crowd mistook for a doting smile. "Sterling, where's my birthday present?" Sabrina cooed, shaking his arm, her eyes shining with anticipation. "For your birthday, I have of course prepared a grand gift for you." Sterling snapped his fingers, and an image appeared on the large projector screen. It was 3 in the morning, inside the Hawthorne Corp office. Sabrina was leading 2 large golden retrievers. She keyed in the password to the research department office. Once inside, she pulled various kinds of meat from her bag and placed them on every computer and every stack of files. Finally, she dumped the rest on the lab's reagent bench. What followed was a chaotic scene of the 2 dogs, driven into a frenzy, tearing the place apart as they fought for the food. The sight of the dogs' wild rampage made the guests gasp. Sabrina's eyes widened in horror. She shook her head frantically, grabbing Sterling's arm to explain. "It's not like that, it's not what you're seeing," the projection continued. The scene changed. A coffee shop. Sabrina handed a stack of cash to a man with a scar on his face. "Remember, don't get caught. This is the down payment. As for the rest, that depends on your skills. $1 million if you cripple her." The scarred man's face twisted into a sinister grin, his eyes glinting with malice. "No, it's not like that, turn it off, this is fake, you're framing me." Sabrina's screams echoed through the living room. In her agitated state, she swept the cake in front of her to the floor. The 18-layer cake collapsed, and the large red letters on the top layer came into full view. "Happy prison sentence, Sabrina." Sabrina recoiled in shock, turning her disbelieving gaze to the ice-cold man beside her. "You, Sterling Hawthorne, you did this on purpose?" Seeing the man's silence, the last shred of hope in Sabrina's heart was crushed. She gripped his shoulders tightly, screaming with all her might. "Why, Sterling Hawthorne, why are you doing this to me? What did I ever do to you?" Sterling shook off her hand and said icily, "Jocelyn Fairchild, you dared to touch her." If Sabrina had just played her part obediently without pulling any extra stunts, Sterling wouldn't have cared if she used him. The fame and status she craved, he could have given her. But she just had to go and touch Jocelyn. Jocelyn was Sterling's bottom line. For years, anyone who so much as scratched her had met a miserable end. The surrounding insults and disdainful looks were like daggers, threatening to kill Sabrina. She gathered her skirts and ran crying towards the main door, but before she could take 2 steps, she tripped on the hem and fell face first into the collapsed cake. A wave of laughter rippled through the room. The Sinclair family's faces turned ashen. Police officers walked in, showed their badges, and produced a pair of silver handcuffs. Miss Sabrina Sinclair, you are suspected of intentional assault and corporate espionage. Please come with us. Watching her daughter being led away by the police, Mrs. Sinclair collapsed to the floor. Mr. Sinclair helped her up, and the two exchanged a look. Tears streamed down Mrs. Sinclair's face as she pushed her younger son, Chester, forward, her voice trembling with feigned heartbreak. Sterling, it's our fault for failing as parents, for raising such a degenerate. Our family has wronged you in this matter. But since the engagement between our families has been set, what do you think of my younger son, Chester? He's always been kind and simple-hearted. He would never do something so shameful. It was obvious the Sinclairs didn't want to lose this opportunity to climb the social ladder. Once this news got out, the Sinclair family would completely disappear from Seacliff City's high society, with no chance of recovery. When Sterling chose the Sinclair family, it was precisely because of their low status. He had thought a daughter from such a family would be less conniving, more content. But he had forgotten that once a person has desires, the lower they start, the more they want, and the more unscrupulous they become. He had never imagined that a rat from the gutter would dare to harm the person he held in the palm of his hand. At this thought, Sterling let out a cold laugh. You think you're worthy. Watching the state of the art equipment being moved into the research lab, the department members were both excited and worried. Having the equipment was one thing, but without a leader to guide the research, it was useless. The assistant understood their concerns. Seeing that her boss seemed to be in a relatively good mood, she tentatively spoke up. Mr. Hawthorne, the research department still needs a supervisor. Sterling nodded slightly, his gaze still fixed on the research data on his computer. Yes, I know. Their supervisor will be back in a few days. Tell them all to prepare to report on their research progress. Also, for the next few days, I will be working overtime with the research department. I want to have a surprise for their supervisor when she returns. The lights in the research lab stayed on for 3 full days and nights. When they finally emerged, the team members were utterly exhausted, their eyelids heavy. What's gotten into Mr. Hawthorne all of a sudden? This is going to be the death of us. Fortunately, we've finally made some progress. Supervisor Fairchild will be so happy when she gets back. Sterling held the experiment report, a faint smile finally appearing on his tired face. When he returned to the villa, he filled Jocelyn's empty room with new things, each one chosen according to her tastes. By the time he was finished, it was already late at night. For the past 3 days, Sterling had barely slept, but he seemed tireless as he picked up a shovel and began planting fruit trees in the yard. They were pear trees, Jocelyn's favorite. When autumn came, he could make pear soup for her. The next morning, Sterling was on a plane back to Linden City. He couldn't wait another second. Every moment away from Jocelyn was torture for him. Upon arriving at Linden City Airport, Sterling got straight into a taxi. The car sped along, the scenery outside changing rapidly, and Sterling's heart raced with anticipation. A procession of black luxury cars, each adorned with the character for joy, suddenly came into view. It was a magnificent sight on the wide road. Wow, which wealthy young master is getting married now? It's so enviable. That girl is so lucky. The female taxi driver slowed down, sighing in admiration. A strange smile touched Sterling's lips. When he and Jocelyn got married, his wedding procession would be even longer than this one. He would announce to the world that Jocelyn was his girl. The taxi finally stopped in front of the Hawthorne villa. Sterling practically burst out of the car, desperate to see Jocelyn immediately. Hey, young man, you haven't paid yet, the driver shouted after him anxiously. But the villa was empty. It was eerily quiet, with not even the maids or butlers in sight. A strong sense of unease welled up from the bottom of Sterling's heart. He anxiously ran to the second floor, the garden, the swimming pool, but still saw no one. Panting, he looked down and saw a red invitation on the coffee table. With trembling hands, Sterling picked it up. His pupils dilated. The wedding of Jocelyn Fairchild and Julian Rutherford, those words were like an explosion in Sterling's mind. He could hardly breathe. His body suddenly went limp, and he stumbled and fell to the floor. No, impossible. The taxi driver had chased after Sterling and was now out of breath herself. "Young man, you still haven't paid your fare." Sterling shot up from the floor, pulled a wad of red cash from his pocket, and shoved it into the driver's hand. "The Grand Imperial Hotel. Fast. You got it, I'll have you there in 5 minutes. This is as far as I can take you. There are too many people at the hotel, I can't get through." Before the driver could finish her sentence, Sterling had already thrown open the car door and bolted. Through the crowd, he saw her at once, Jocelyn, in a white wedding dress. Under the sunlight, she was exceptionally radiant, as if all the light in the world was shining on her. Julian Rutherford, in a perfectly tailored suit, had eyes full of gentle light. After receiving permission, he bent down and swept Jocelyn into his arms in a princess carry. "No, you can't get married," Sterling screamed with all his might, his voice hoarse, pained, and desperate, like a condemned prisoner. But the clamor of the crowd and the popping of confetti completely drowned out his voice. Yet Jocelyn seemed to hear him. She turned her head in his direction, a smile of release on her face. Then she buried her head in Julian's solid chest, the strong and steady beat of his heart making her cheeks flush slightly. Sterling's eyes felt like they were about to split. He took a step, about to charge forward like a madman, but he had barely moved when a heavy blow struck the back of his head. Sterling's vision went black and he collapsed. Splash, a basin of ice-cold water was mercilessly thrown on him, shocking him awake. The television in the room was broadcasting a live feed of Jocelyn's wedding. Sterling's eyes instantly turned bloodshot. A cold, menacing aura emanated from him, the ferocity in his gaze enough to tear a person apart. Realizing his hands and feet were bound to a chair, he began to struggle violently, like a cornered beast. The chair creaked under his movements, the floor seeming to vibrate. Watching the bride on the screen slowly walk towards the groom, his pupils constricted, and his struggles grew even more frantic. The chair toppled over, taking him with it. "No," a heart-wrenching cry echoed through the room. "Sterling Hawthorne, have you still not woken up?" A pair of silver high heels stopped in front of him. Esther Hawthorne emerged, her face an icy mask. "What do you think you're doing? Crashing the wedding. As her uncle, do you want her to be shamed by everyone all over again? Even if you go, do you think Joe would be willing to leave with you? The things you did to her, they don't deserve to be forgiven." Esther fought to suppress the rage in her heart, afraid she would lose control and stomp on his head. The day before the wedding, she had sent someone to investigate what had happened in Seacliff City. The results had shocked her. She would never have imagined that Sterling would hurt Jocelyn for another woman. Sterling froze, his struggles ceasing. He latched onto a sliver of hope, his explanation tumbling out in a hoarse, desperate voice. "Sister, just untie me. I know I was wrong. I never really meant to hurt Joe, I just—" Esther cut him off, her voice cold and devoid of emotion. "You just wanted to make her give up on you, and as you wished, she has. But why are you suddenly unwilling to let go?" Esther looked down, seeing the man's defiant expression. She continued in her cold tone. "Joe is just like her mother, stubborn as an ox. Once she makes a decision, she never changes it. If I'm not mistaken, she's been in love with you for a long time, right? But now she's given up. Do you really think she'll ever come back? Sterling, you raised her. You know her best, don't you?" Sterling shuddered, his face paling. Suddenly, he couldn't say a word. He had forgotten. Ever since she was a child, once Jocelyn made a decision, she never looked back. Even if she was covered in wounds, she never regretted it. This time would be no exception. The officiant's deep, clear voice from the television echoed in the silent room. "Miss Jocelyn Fairchild, do you take Mr. Julian Rutherford to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part?" A clear, firm voice reached Sterling's ears. "I do." Hearing that answer, Sterling's eyes widened uncontrollably. The last thread of sanity in his mind snapped. Tears fell from his dim, lifeless eyes, mixing with the water dripping from his hair as they slid down his cold face and hit the floor. Sterling trembled as he lifted his head. On the screen, the groom, his ears flushed red, kissed the bride's cheek. The crowd cheered. The bride stood on her toes and kissed the man's soft, red lips. The groom, after a moment of stunned silence, closed his eyes and returned the kiss with deep affection. Sterling collapsed to the floor in despair. The ropes had rubbed his wrists raw from his struggles, drawing blood. In a daze, he heard his name. It was a familiar, longed-for voice, a voice he had heard for many years. Jocelyn's voice brought Sterling back to his senses. On the television, I was looking at the camera, my clear eyes filled with gratitude and only gratitude. My lips were curved in a slight smile, my tone respectful and earnest. Sterling found this version of me strangely unfamiliar. I want to thank my Uncle Sterling. He has been like a father to me, teaching me, raising me. Without him, I wouldn't be who I am today. I once made a mistake, and I am so grateful that he stopped me in time, preventing an even bigger error. Now, I have found the person I will spend the rest of my life with. I wish him the life he has always wanted. I wish him happiness. On the screen, I took a deep bow, thanking him for the years he had spent raising me. Sterling's heart twisted in pain, all the strength seeming to drain from his body. After a long while, a bitter, powerless smile touched his lips. He had gotten his wish, but now he was filled with regret. Esther was right. He was the one who knew me best. At this moment, he was finally and completely awake, realizing that he had personally pushed me away, pushed me to a place where he no longer existed, a place from which I would never return. He didn't know how long it took for the sound of his weeping to finally subside. Sterling raised his head, his eyes bloodshot, the previous gloom gone. His voice was as hoarse as an old man's as he humbly begged, "Sister, can you let me see Joe one more time?" "All right." Esther said nothing more. She knew he had finally understood. She knew her brother. Although Sterling was a man who would never give up until he achieved his goal, he loved Jocelyn. And for that love, for Jocelyn's sake, he would let go. He would also leave a path open for them. The relationship of uncle and niece was, after all, better than becoming strangers. After the wedding, Julian took me to a magnificent and luxurious mountain estate. This was the Rutherford family's ancestral home. Just as we got out of the car, a familiar back came into my line of sight. For some reason, I felt that this figure seemed much older. It was no longer the tall, straight, and indestructible figure of years past. I glanced at the man beside me and saw his lips suddenly turn down. I couldn't help but let out a soft laugh, my small hand gently winding around his. We walked hand in hand and stopped in front of Sterling. "Uncle Sterling?" Sterling's heart trembled. He fought to suppress the churning emotions and gave a slight nod. His voice held the authoritative tone of an elder with a hint of a warning. "Julian Rutherford, I raised Joe. She's like, if you dare to let her suffer any grievance, to shed a single tear, I will absolutely not let you off the hook." Julian looked down at me, his eyes full of amusement. "In this lifetime, I, Julian Rutherford, will never let Joe be sad. Don't worry, Uncle Sterling." Hearing that term of address from Julian's mouth, a nameless fire ignited in Sterling's heart. "You go inside first. I have a few words I want to say to Joe alone." The commanding tone displeased Julian. He leaned in close to my ear, his warm breath tickling me. "My dear wife, don't make me wait too long, or I might get upset." My heart tickled too. On the way here, Sterling had thought of many things. He wanted to explain what had happened before. He wanted to tell me that he didn't love Sabrina Sinclair. He wanted to tell me that his engagement to Sabrina was off. But when he saw my clear, pure eyes, Sterling couldn't get a single word out. He knew that for me, none of these explanations mattered anymore. "Uncle Sterling?" It wasn't until I spoke that Sterling slowly raised his head and managed to apologize. "Joe, I'm sorry. For all the things I did that hurt you, I cut him off. I didn't want to revisit the past. After all, Sterling had raised me for many years. I couldn't truly hold a grudge against him." I looked into his gloomy eyes and gave a faint smile. "It's all in the past, Uncle Sterling." Yes, it was all in the past. The pain he had caused me could never be erased. It would forever remain in the past. And with it, my love for him would also forever remain in the past. A bitter smile touched Sterling's lips, and the resentment in his heart flared up again. He lost control of his emotions once more, the flames of desire and regret flickering in his eyes. "Joe, if I said I regret it, would you give me another chance? You only married Julian Rutherford because of an engagement contract. You don't love him, do you? All these years, the one you loved was me, right? Joe, I didn't see my own heart clearly before, but now I do. My heart has long been filled with only you. There's no room for anyone else. Before I cut him off again, my eyes as calm as a placid lake. I gave another polite, distant smile. Uncle Sterling, I was just being childish before. Don't take the words of a naive girl to heart. Julian is a very good person, and I am willing to spend my life with him. This was our mutual choice, not just because of a piece of paper. I was sad you didn't come to my wedding today. In the future, for your and my new aunt-in-law's wedding, can you invite me? Uncle Sterling? The rest of Sterling's words were caught in his throat. A bitter taste filled his mouth, and the veins on his hands bulged with restraint. A thick sense of powerlessness washed over him. He was like a condemned prisoner, struggling futilely before finally letting go. Seeing the man standing with his head bowed in silence, I said nothing more and quietly turned to leave. I will. The man's deep, hoarse voice came from behind me. Happy wedding. Your uncle will be sure to make up for your wedding gift. I turned around, a happy smile on my face, my eyes sparkling. Thank you, Uncle Sterling. In that moment, Sterling seemed to see the little girl I once was, just as happy to receive a gift. Finished chatting, goodbye, Uncle Sterling. We won't see you out on our wedding night. Julian came out, a look of complaint on his face as he pulled me into his arms. Long after we had gone, Sterling stood there, frozen, his gaze fixed on the villa where we had disappeared. He watched as the lights in the second-floor bedroom flickered on, casting a warm, yellow glow. Two shadows intertwined intimately. Joe, are you ready? If not, we can always do this another day. A pair of soft lips silenced the rest of Julian's words. A smile touched Julian's lips, and his large, warm hand found my slender waist again. Our bodies gradually merged, and soft moans filled the room. Thump in the heat of the moment, a thick notebook fell to the floor. Photos scattered out from a high school Jocelyn wearing black-rimmed glasses, to a university Jocelyn with long hair, to a professional Jocelyn in a business suit. Every single one was of me. My eyes widened. Why were there so many pictures of me in Julian's room? This heavy notebook looked like it had been around for a few years. I looked up at the man's innocent face and smacked his restless hand away. Julian Rutherford, don't you have some explaining to do? Julian threw up his hands in surrender, a wounded look on his face, his tone full of mock grievance. Explain what? That my intentions towards my wife have been long planned. That I've been secretly in love with my wife for 10 years. I was too shocked to speak. Julian couldn't help but reach out and brush a stray strand of hair from my cheek, his magnetic voice exceptionally gentle. Why are you so surprised, Joe? Having a secret crush isn't a crime. My eyes grew misty. I wrapped my arms around his neck and whispered, Julian Rutherford, thank you. In our next life, it'll be my turn to have a secret crush on you. Under the dim yellow light, the flickering shadows revealed two figures, tightly intertwined. The next morning, as the employees of Hawthorne Corp entered the office, they saw the stark white light of the research lab, which had been on all night. They couldn't help but whisper among themselves in surprise. What's gotten into Mr. Hawthorne? Supervisor Fairchild was like that in the beginning, working herself to death, living in the research lab without sleep. It was only after Mr. Hawthorne forced her to rest that she started eating and sleeping like a normal person. The assistant let out a deep sigh as she carried breakfast and a stack of files into the lab. Now that Supervisor Fairchild was gone, there was no one who could persuade Mr. Hawthorne. It wasn't until the sweet scent of pears wafted from the yard that Sterling finally left the sealed-off lab and returned to the now slightly dusty villa. Sterling stood under the pear tree, his gaze dim, his eyes tinged with a faint sadness. Joe, the pears are ripe, but the person who loved to eat pears was already gone. Sterling called the gardener to pick all the pears and send them to an orphanage. Then he got back in his car and returned to the cold research lab. There was only one thing on his mind: to complete the research that had been Jocelyn's dream for so many years. He owed her this. He had destroyed her efforts and her dreams. Even if it took everything he had, he would make it up to her. Ever since she was a child, whatever Jocelyn wanted, Sterling would find a way to get it for her. This was the only time he had ever personally destroyed the thing she cared about most. 3 years later, at the 1-month celebration for Jocelyn's child, a file folder arrived from Seacliff City. Inside was an experiment report and a Hawthorne Corp stock transfer agreement. There was also a card. "Joe, your uncle has finally delivered your wedding gift. I wish you eternal happiness." My eyes grew misty, my gaze fixed on the experiment report. At that very moment, Sterling Hawthorne was lying in a hospital bed. After 3 years of working day and night, his body had completely broken down. The moment the experiment succeeded, he had fainted from the excitement and had been rushed to the hospital. Esther Hawthorne stood by his bedside, scolding him. If you dare to work yourself to death like this again, I'll curse you out." Sterling took the apple from her hand and smiled sheepishly, making a solemn promise. "I won't," because Jocelyn's wish had been fulfilled. And so, his wish had been fulfilled too.